Good evening all. I welcome all the participants to day 12 of virtual internship on IoT project development using industry grade microcontroller. Yesterday I completed implementation of I2C protocol in hardware as well as software. Today I am going to cover different topics like interfacing of LM35 temperature sensor, interrupt programming, timer programming and EEPROM programming. So let me first of all start with interfacing of LM35 temperature sensor. So this is the data sheet. You can download data sheet from the internet. Part number is LM35. So it is analog temperature sensor. Its output is analog proportional to temperature. The important parameter is output voltage, which is proportional to temperature. So look at here, point number 2. Output is linear. It gives 10 millivolt per degree Celsius. So when temperature is 0, ambient temperature is 0 around temperature sensor, analog voltage is 0. When temperature is 1 degree, output voltage of this sensor is 10 millivolt. So for every degree Celsius temperature, it gives 10 millivolt. Say for example, if temperature is 40 degrees Celsius, then for each degree output is 10 millivolt. So output voltage of this sensor will be 400 millivolt. So by measuring this voltage, we can determine temperature. So quickly we'll complete program for LM35 temperature sensor interfacing. We have already written code for analog to digital conversion. So same code will be used for this temperature sensor interfacing. Let me quickly discuss. We have PIC microcontroller. Then we have LM35 temperature sensor. LM35 temperature sensor has 3 pins. So one pin is connected to 5 volt, one pin is grounded, and its output pin is connected to any one analog channel. So in C program which I have written, I have connected this to RA0 pin, which is multiplexed with AN0 channel. This is LM35 temperature sensor. VCC pin of this temperature sensor is connected to 5 volt, and ground pin is connected to ground. And this is output pin. So on this output pin, we get analog voltage proportional to temperature. Say for example, if temperature is 36 degrees Celsius, this output voltage V out will be equal to 360 millivolt. So what we'll do is, through our program, we will first of all convert this analog voltage into digital voltage, and we will divide that digital number by proper divisor so that it gets converted into temperature. So very simple procedure. Just have a look at pin out. There are 3 pins in this temperature sensor, and it is available in different packages. So this is TO220 style package. It looks like transistor. So it has 3 pins. If you are facing this LM35 temperature sensor from front side, then on the left hand side, VS ground and V out. In TO92 package, if you are facing from front side, this is VS pin, that is 5 volt. You can apply here 5 volt. Maximum voltage you can apply on VS pin is 30 volt. On the middle pin, we get analog voltage, output analog voltage, and this is ground pin. So I am using this package. I am using TO92 package. Now let us go to the code. I have copied code that we have already written for analog to digital conversion. We have also showed Protis simulation of analog to digital conversion. So same code is used here. Only few instructions are modified. And let us understand how to modify those instructions. So we have already discussed analog to digital conversion. We have discussed this A to D function. Inside this A to D function, what we do is we convert analog voltage on analog pin to digital number. So this code we have already discussed. Then what we do is we combine 2-bit result in one register and 8-bit result in another register to altogether to get 10-bit result. And that 10-bit result is saved in this variable VR. And output value of this function is this 10-bit result. So we are returning this value to the calling function. So initially, what we are doing is we are loading OSC con register with 0xEF. We are configuring on-chip oscillator for 4 MHz. We are selecting channel 0 for analog to digital conversion, and we are configuring it as analog channel through ADCON 1 register. Through ADCON 2 register, what we are doing? We are setting proper acquisition time, and we are also setting proper clock frequency for ADC module. Our analog channel must be input channel, and it is on RA0 pin. So this TC0 bit must be 1. Then we are clearing other pins because we have interface our LCD display to port D and port C. That is, data pins of LCD are connected to port D, and control pins are connected to 2 pins on port C register. After that, we are initializing the LCD display. Then we are displaying message ATC welcomes you. One more message is displayed on the second line, LCD CMD 0xC0. With this command, we put cursor on the second line, and then we are displaying string hello. After some delay, we are once again initializing the LCD display. That is, we are clearing the data. Here one variable is created to save the temperature value. TMPR stands for here temperature. Then after clearing the data on the LCD display, on the first row we are displaying temperature, and on the second row we are displaying actual temperature. So actual temperature measurement is done inside never ending while loop. Now what we are doing is we are calling this A to D function, and what we have done here is we have connected this LM35 sensor output to this AN0 pin. So through this function, through this A to D function, we are converting analog voltage given by LM35 temperature sensor into digital number, and that result is 10-bit. This TMPR is 16-bit variable. First 6 bits in this variable will be 0. So only last 10 bits in the TMPR variable will have data proportional to temperature. Now this digital number must be divided by proper divisor so as to get the actual temperature. Let us understand in this instruction why is divisor 2.055. Let us understand reason for it. I have taken here example. If ambient temperature around this LM35 temperature sensor is 36 degrees Celsius, then for 36 degrees Celsius, analog voltage is 360 millivolt. Now when this analog voltage is converted into digital number with reference voltage, in our case, V reference plus of ADC is 5 volt and V reference minus is 0 volt. We already discussed this part. Now calculate step size. Our ADC is 10 bit. So voltage step size is 5 volt divided by 1024. 10 bit ADC 2 raised to 10 is 1024. So what we get is 4.88 millivolt. Now what is our analog voltage here? 360 millivolt. So digital equivalent number is in decimal. Digital equivalent in decimal is equal to analog voltage divided by step size. So digital equivalent is now analog voltage is 360 millivolt at 30 degrees Celsius temperature. 360 millivolt upon 4.88 millivolt, and this number is 173.74. So on chip ADC will give result after rounding off. On chip ADC will give result of 174. So ADC will give result 174. So when temperature is 36 degrees Celsius, we get decimal equivalent equal to 174 after converting analog voltage into digital number. So decimal 174 we get. And now what we want to display? We want to display 36 degrees Celsius on LCD display. So we must divide this 174 by proper divisor so that 36 degrees Celsius will be displayed. Another method is lookup table, but lookup table is not a smart way of writing the code. So instead of lookup table, we'll use our equation, and simple equation will divide this number by proper divisor. So now temperature will be equal to, what we want is when decimal equivalent is 174, what is our temperature? Temperature is 36. So what we should do is our divisor is equal to decimal equivalent, that is 174 divided by temperature. So 174 divided by 36. I think I made a mistake here in RE, sorry. It is 73. I have directly written this number. So this number is 73.74 and after round off it is 74. So now this 74 divided by 36 is equal to 2.055. So our divisor is 2.055. So when we divide, decimal number by 2.055, it will get converted to actual temperature. So 360 millivolt upon 4.88 millivolt is 73.74. After round up, it will become 74. So this decimal equivalent is 74 when temperature is 36. So divisor is 74 upon 36, that is equal to 2.055. Now in program, what you need to do is just divide this result, ADC result, by 2.055. So it will get converted to temperature value. In order to display this temperature on LCD display, we must do digit separation. And for separating out the digit, there is function called modular division. We already discussed this function. In modular division function, we use modular division as well as conventional division to separate out digits in the result. And after that, we are adding hexadecimal 0x30 in order to convert these digits into ASCII values. So after separating out the digits, I am putting cursor on the second row so that temperature is displayed on the second row. So each ASCII digit I am displaying on the LCD display starting with most significant digit M4, M3, M2, M1. Our separated digits are saved in M1, M2, M3, M4 variables, and M1, M2, M3, M4 variables are global variables. After that, I am writing one space character and then displaying unit degree Celsius. So there is delay added here. Delay MS 500 means after every 1 second that voltage on the analog pin is converted. It is converted into temperature and it is displayed on the LCD display. So this is the code. I will quickly write to show you Protis simulation. So we need to add here this temperature sensor. So click on this component icon, click on this P here, search required component, type part number LM35. So LM35 is showed in the search result, select it, click OK. . So put the component here. This LM35 temperature sensor has 3 pins as I already mentioned, VCC, ground and Vout. Now you connect 5 volt. So click on this generator icon, select DC source. Now connect it to this VCC pin. Now we need ground. Select ground. And now what you do is connect output of this temperature sensor to AN0 channel. I have already connected here a probe. So when we start the simulation, this probe will show analog voltage of this LM35 temperature sensor. Rest of the connections are similar to our ADC project. We have already discussed ADC project in C programming as well as in Proteus simulation. The only difference is we have just replaced potentiometer by LM35 temperature sensor. That is the only change. And code is also modified. We have divided ADC result by 2.055 so that it gets converted into actual temperature. Now let me run this file in MPLAB XID. So hex file is generated and path of the hex file is already included in this Proteus simulation software. So let us run it. So it shows 27 degrees Celsius temperature. And if you carefully look at the sensor here, so here also there is 27 degrees Celsius temperature. And this probe shows analog voltage of 0.27176. That is around 270, 271 millivolt. We can change this temperature. So if I change the temperature here, so it will be reflected on this LCD display. So 32 degrees Celsius temperature here also there is 32. And output analog voltage is also changing here. This probe is indicating what is the analog voltage on this pin. So this is how we can make use of on-chip ADC for temperature measurement. That is, we need to interface external temperature sensor to the microcontroller. There are different types of sensors available. Now we'll move on to next topic, interrupts. Before we move on to the next topic, I would like to play small video. In this video, I will demonstrate use of LM35 temperature sensor for measurement of temperature. This is LM35 temperature sensor. It has 3 pins. One pin is connected to VCC. You can see here this yellow wire. This pin is connected to ground, and middle pin of this LM35 temperature sensor is connected to AN0 channel, that is RS0 port pin. The current ambient temperature indicated is 31 degrees Celsius. Now to increase the temperature, I will put soldering gun near this temperature sensor. You will see now temperature is rising. Now solder gun is taken away, temperature will decrease. Thank you. Now I will start new topic on interrupts. First of all, what is interrupt? There are two ways to check conditions in the program. One method is called polling method. In polling method, usually we make use of while condition. With the help of this condition, we continuously check that condition, whether that condition is occurred or not. In polling method, your microcontroller or microprocessor remains busy in checking that condition. So most of the time is utilized for checking that condition. So microcontroller may not be available for checking other conditions. There are some conditions which may happen at random point of time. So for such conditions, we can make use of interrupts. So with the help of interrupt, signal is generated, and that signal, as name indicates, it interrupts the execution of program. So microcontroller completes execution of current instruction. It push address of the next instruction on stack memory, and it jumps to the vector address. And at vector address, small piece of code is written. From that vector address, again there is one more jump where actual interrupt service routine is written. So at the vector address, limited amount of memory is available. That's why code is not directly written at vector address. So whenever interrupt occurs, microprocessor jumps to the particular memory location, and that location is called vector address. And for most of the microcontrollers, these vector addresses are unique, and you cannot change that vector address. It is given in the data sheet. So for PIC microcontroller, there are two vector addresses. First vector address is for high priority interrupt, and second vector address is for low priority interrupt. So for high priority interrupt, vector address is 0008 hex, and for low priority interrupt, vector address is 0018 hex. So when high priority interrupt occurs, program jumps to the 0008 address, and when low priority interrupt occurs, it jumps to the 0018 hex address. There are total 10 registers which are used to control interrupt operations. So today I am going to demonstrate only one particular interrupt, that is external hardware interrupt. So total 10 registers are there. First register is reset control register. There is one bit which is related to defining high priority and low priority for the interrupts. So when there is one bit in the reset control register, if that bit is enabled, then it is possible to apply high priority and low priority on different interrupt sources in PIC microcontroller. Then we have interrupt control register. It contains some bits. Interrupt control 2 register, interrupt control 3 register. Remember, there is no interrupt control 1 register. Then there are PIR1, peripheral interrupt request register. So there are two such registers. Then PIE1, peripheral interrupt enable request interrupt enable registers. And then IPR, interrupt priority request registers. So total 10 registers are there. So for each interrupt source, there are flag bits. So whenever that flag bit is set, it is indication that that particular interrupt is occurred. So these interrupt sources we can selectively enable or disable. For example, if we need interrupt related to only RB0 pin of the microcontroller, then we can enable it, and rest of the sources we can disable. So it is up to us which interrupt sources we are supposed to enable. So for each interrupt source there is flag bit, and that indicates whether interrupt is occurred or not. Then there is enable bit. Enable bit is like a key. So when enable bit of the interrupt is set to 1, that particular interrupt gets enabled. Then priority bit to select high priority or low priority. So with the help of this IPR1 and IPR2 registers, you can put priority for the interrupt sources, whether that interrupt falls to the category of high priority or low priority. So that we can decide with the help of these control registers. There are three external interrupts. Three external interrupts are they are multiplex on RB0 pin, RB1 pin, and RB2 pin. So on RB0 pin, there is INT0 interrupt. So today I am going to discuss about how to trigger interrupt on this INT0 pin. Then next is RB1 pin. Interrupt source on this RB1 is called INT1. Another is RB3 pin. Interrupt source on this pin is called INT2. So by applying either rising edge or falling edge, we can trigger interrupts on these pins. So all these three interrupts are edge triggered. They are not level triggered. So there must be rising edge or falling edge. So we can decide whether we want rising edge triggered or falling edge triggered. So that is configured through control register. So it is possible to configure either rising or falling edge trigger through SFR, that is special function register in this interrupt module. Additional hardware interrupt can be generated through RB3 pin. In most of my product, I am using 4 keys. RB3 pin is multiplexed with CCP2 module. So when we enable interrupt of CCP2 module, it is possible to have one more hardware interrupt on RB3 pin. Then there is another type of interrupt called port B interrupt on change. So whenever there is change in RB4, RB5 or RB6, RB7 voltage level on this pin, then interrupt gets triggered. This interrupt is called interrupt on change. So whenever there is logic 1 to logic 0 change or logic 0 to logic 1 change on these port pins, then interrupt gets triggered. We can enable or disable this interrupt on change. Software interrupts examples are, so interrupts are hardware type and software type. Software interrupts are like interrupt generated through timer, ADC, comparator. These interrupts are called software interrupts. And the external devices which use the signal for interrupt operation are called hardware interrupts. So registers associated with the interrupt module are Archon register. So there is one bit. With the help of this bit, we can enable or disable priority levels. Another register is INT-CON, INT-CON2, INT-CON3. We'll discuss these registers quickly. In PIC 18F4520 data sheet, section number 9.0 is on interrupts. So registers I already discussed. This is the PIC 18 interrupt logic. So different interrupt sources are shown here. There is one bit called global interrupt enable. When this bit is 1, interrupts will get enabled. However, other interrupt enable bits must be set to 1. So when global interrupt enable bit is 0, all interrupt gets masked, all interrupt gets disabled. So it is as good as master key. This bit is master key for the interrupt. So for each interrupt source, as I already said, there is flag bit. So for example, for timer 0, there is timer 0 interrupt flag bit. Timer 0 IE. Timer 0 IE means timer 0 interrupt enable. Timer 0 priority bit, whether it is high priority or low priority, like that. So whenever timer 0 interrupt enable bit is set to 1, and whenever timer 0 interrupt flag bit sets, then interrupt related to timer 0 gets triggered. That's the meaning. So this is the PIC 18 interrupt logic. For each interrupt source, as already mentioned, there is flag bit, and there is interrupt enable bit and priority bit. So in this block diagram, you will understand P stands for priority bit, E stands for enable bit, and F stands for flag bit. First register is interrupt control register. All registers on chip PIC 18F4.20 are 8 bit. All SFRs are 8 bit. This interrupt control register has total 8 bits. Bit number 7, it is from left hand side in this block diagram here. It is GIE. GIE stands for global interrupt enable bit. So it enables all high priority interrupts. And when it is 0, all interrupt gets disabled. So disable all interrupts. So when IPN bit is equal to 1, enables all high priority interrupts. There is one more bit called peripheral interrupt enable bit. The interrupt sources like ADC, ADC and other timer like timer 1, timer 2, timer 3. They are called peripheral devices. So with the help of this PI bit, we can enable peripheral interrupts. So when this bit is 1, enable all low priority interrupt bits. when it is 1, and when IPN is 0, and when PI bit is 1, enable all unmasked peripheral interrupts. So for enabling the peripheral interrupts, this PI bit must be set to 1. The next bit is timer 0. As I am not going to discuss timer 0 right now, we'll concentrate only on interrupt 0. External interrupt on external pin, that is RB0 pin, that is interrupt 0. As we want interrupt on INT0 pin, this bit must be set to 1. Then RBIE, other interrupt sources we are not using at the moment. So keep other bit 0. So we should have, even if you keep this PI bit 0, our program will work. So what is code word? 1101. It is 0xD0. Or you can selectively set this bit to 1 through bit addressable instruction. It is up to you. So I will go to the program. Program is very simple. Understanding interrupt is really important, because in your communication protocol, we require interrupt. So I have included this C code which is written for interrupt. So first part of the program is exactly similar to our previous programs. So just I am scrolling down. I am using LCD display to give indication whether interrupt is occurred or not. So LCD display is used in 8-bit mode. So part of the LCD display code is exactly same. Now to handle the interrupt sources in PIC microcontroller, we need to check source of the interrupt. And to check the source of the interrupt, there is one reserved keyword. It is also called specifier. And this specifier is double underscore interrupt. So this double underscore interrupt is the specifier. It is reserved keyword. This reserved keyword, with the help of this reserved keyword, we can write subroutine. And inside this subroutine, we can check source of interrupt. Now in our case, source of interrupt is signal applied, interrupt signal applied on RB0 pin, that is INT0 pin of the PIC microcontroller. So INT0 interrupt is multiplexed with RB0 pin. So this reserved keyword must be used, and you can check multiple interrupts here. Like you can add now LSIP condition, LSIP. If you want to check whether, if for example you have two interrupt sources enabled in PIC microcontroller, first is INT0 interrupt and second is for example timer 0 interrupt. So whenever timer 0 interrupt gets triggered, corresponding flag bit will be set. So you can directly check here TMR 0 IF is equal to 1. Directly you can check, and then you can call the interrupt service routine for this function. So you'll have some routine here, TMR 0 ISR. So of course you require your curly brackets. So this way you can check which interrupt is occurred by checking the status of corresponding flag bits. So this is the general procedure. So here you also specify whether you are checking high priority interrupts or low priority interrupts. So I have written here this small subroutine for checking high priority interrupts. If you have enabled some low priority interrupts, then exactly similar type of code is required. I would like to show you here. Control C. And the only change will be put here low priority. Put low priority and give some slightly different name here, ISR routine 1. So in this way, you can check high priority interrupts and low priority interrupts. So it depends which priority you have assigned. If you have assigned high priority to the interrupt, then those interrupts must be checked under this subroutine. And if you assign low priority to the interrupts, those interrupts must be checked here. Of course, you need to modify conditions here, because this function is written for low priority interrupts. And as I already mentioned here, this timer 0 ISR and anti-0 routine, these sources have high priority. So for other sources of interrupt, you must check your condition with help of if else if statements. Add here if else if. So you can increase here number of conditions if there are more number of interrupt sources. So this is the simple process. So I am removing this piece of code. So I am sticking to only one interrupt source here right now. Then go to main function. In main function, of course, oscillator control register, make all the pins digital. Here I am not using any analog pin. So ADCON 1 is loaded with maybe 0x0f. So when you load it with 0x0f, all pins will become digital input output. Digital input output. Then TRIS B. TRIS B is equal to 0x01. It is not 00. Let us understand. What we are doing is, suppose this is peak 18F4520. Peak 18F4520. And this is RB0 pin. This RB0 pin is multiplexed with INT0. So INT0 interrupt we can trigger on RB0 pin. So your interrupt pin must be input pin. So RB0 pin must be input. First condition is RB0 pin must be input. There are two ways to configure the interrupt: rising edge triggered or falling edge triggered. So depending upon that, you either connect pull up or pull down register. With both configurations, we can trigger the interrupt. So let's go to program. So what I have done here, TRIS B is equal to 0x01. So when you write this hexadecimal number in binary, it will have 7 zeros followed by 1. So last bit in this TRIS B register will be 1 and rest of the bits will be 0. It means that RB0 pin will be input and remaining pins on the port B will be output. So with the help of this instruction, we have made RB0 pin as an input pin. Now we need to connect here either pull up or pull down. It depends upon where you want to connect the switch. So in first method, what I have done is I have connected pull up register of 10K value. One end is connected to 5 volt. Another end is connected to RB0 pin as well as one end of the switch. This is switch here. Now when you close the switch, logic 0 will get applied on the RB0 pin. And when you open the switch, logic 1 will apply get on the RB0 pin. So when you close the switch, what we will have here? Falling edge. So when switch is open, continuously there will be logic 1. And this switch will be press to on switch. Usually we can also use toggle switch. But usually in keypad interfacing, we use push to on switch. So when the switch is open, continuously there is logic 1. Interrupt will not be triggered for constant voltage. Interrupt will be triggered only for edge of the signal. And it depends upon how you configure the interrupt. You can configure for falling edge as well as rising edge of the signal. Now in this case, when you close the switch, logic 0 will get applied. So signal will fall down to here 0 volt. So if we configure the interrupt for falling edge, interrupt will get triggered. If you configure the interrupt for rising edge, then what will happen is after closing the switch, when you again open the switch, interrupt will get triggered. So if you want interrupt to be triggered immediately after closing the switch, then right method here is to configure interrupt for falling edge. So here you configure falling edge triggered. So desirable interrupt here is falling. You can also configure rising edge, but problem is when you close the switch, signal will first of all fall down. Again you need to open it. Then signal will trigger the interrupt. If you configure rising edge. Second method is connect switch in between RB0 pin and 5 volt and connect pull down register. I think on day 2 or day 3, I already discussed concept of pull up and pull down register and what is their necessity. So when you connect register in between port pin and ground, it is called pull down register because it is pulling down the port pin to the 0 volt level. So when switch is open, you will have here logic 0. Look at here this waveform. There is logic 0 when switch is open. When switch is closed, switch closed. When switch is closed, this 5 will get applied to the RB0 pin. So now we have here rising edge at the moment we close the switch. And when we open the switch, again signal will fall down to 0 volt. So desirable interrupt here is rising edge triggered. We can also configure here falling edge, but problem is when you close the switch, signal will go to 5 volt, and after opening the switch, it will again go to 0 volt. So interrupt will get triggered here if you configure it for falling edge. So right method here is rising edge triggered. So if you interface key to this port pin, we can detect whether key is pressed or not with the help of interrupt. With the help of polling method also we can check. So as topic is on interrupts, I will not discuss polling method. As I am displaying data on the LCD display, whether interrupt is triggered or not. So this we need this TC and TC register to be loaded with 0x00. Then clear interrupt 0 flag bit. Our interrupt is here INT 0 and corresponding bit is interrupt flag bit. So let me show you this bit. There is interrupt 0 flag bit and it is there in INT con register, interrupt 0 flag bit. At the beginning, this bit must be cleared through program. So bit is cleared, and after that we must set INT0 IE bit to 1. If this bit is 0, interrupt 0 source will get disabled. So to enable the interrupt 0 interrupt source, this bit must be set to 1. In addition, this GI bit must be set to 1. So interrupt 0 IE bit is set to 1. This S triggered INT ED0. I will discuss what is meaning of this bit. If you keep this PI bit to 0 or 1, our interrupt will be triggered because external hardware interrupt does not fall under the category of peripheral interrupt. GI bit must be set to 1 to enable interrupt sources. So this is global interrupt enable bit. So here I have used bit addressable instruction in 2 different modes. Like I use only field name in the SFR, INT0IF. You can also put this instruction like this. Both ways will work correctly. So we can also write INT con bits dot INT0IF is equal to 0. And even if you do not write this here, still it will work. This INT ED0 bit is there in another SFR. That is INT con 2 register. In INT con 2 register, there are 3 bits here: INT ED0, INT EDG1, INT EDG2. So when this bit is 0, falling edge triggered interrupt will be configured for falling edge triggered. So meaning is given here: INT EDG0, external interrupt 0 is select bit. So when this bit is 1, interrupt on rising edge will be triggered, and when this bit is 0, interrupt on falling edge will be triggered. What we want is we want interrupt on falling edge because I have used pull-up register. So we want interrupt on falling edge. Other interrupt sources we are not using. So other bits you can keep any value. First bit is RBPU. PU stands for here pull-up register and RB stands for port B. So there is on-chip pull-up register connected to port B and it is weak pull-up register. Weak pull-up means its resistance value is large, usually around 100 kilo ohm. Standard value of pull-up register is 10K. So this pull-up register value is very large. That's why it is called weak pull-up. Larger resistance implies that weak pull-up. And when resistor connected to the port pin has smaller resistance, it is called strong pull-up. RBPU bar. Bar means when this bit is 0, pull-up register gets enabled. and when RBPU bit is 1, it's get disabled. So we don't want on-chip pull-up register. So I have set this bit to 1. So instead of setting this bit to 1, I have not anything, because by default, whenever there is power on reset, this bit is set to 1. Its default value is written here. Look at here. This is the default value. So we need not do anything with this bit unless and until you require this on-chip pull-up register. Don't do anything with this bit. If you want to use this on-chip pull-up register, then clear this bit to 0. So what we'll do is INT EDG 0 will clear it to 0. So we have configured falling edge triggered interrupt with the help of this INT EDG 0 bit. Global interrupt enable is, this bit is set to 1. Now I am entering into the never ending while loop. With the help of a LCD initialization function, I am clearing the data and I am displaying message LCD string I am in main program. That is on first line. What is my message? I am in, and on second line I am displaying main program, and I have added some delay here. So program is kept busy inside this never ending while loop. So whenever we trigger interrupt on external pin, microcontroller will jump to vector address. So where we have written small code here, and we are checking whether interrupt is really occurred or not. So if interrupt is occurred, this flag bit will be set. So if this bit is 1, it means that interrupt is occurred. Then we are calling this INT0 subroutine, INT0 underscore routine. So this routine is written here. This is void INT0 underscore routine. Of course, function prototype of this subroutine is declared at the beginning here. This is the function prototype declared here. Void INT0 underscore routine. Now, as soon as you enter into the interrupt service routine, disable the interrupt. Otherwise, same interrupt may occur again, and it is not recommended to service another interrupt when you are in one service routine. So whenever you enter into any interrupt service routine, disable all interrupt sources. After that, clear the interrupt 0 flag bit. It must be cleared in software. If you do not clear this bit, again interrupt may triggered even though if you do not apply signal. Now to ensure that really interrupt is triggered on INT0 pin, I am checking whether this pin is equal to 0. What I mentioned here, we have connected switch with the help of pull-up register to RB0 pin. So when switch is closed, see what happens here. Because of noise signal, there is possibility of generating pulses on this pin. Of course, we can also connect 100 nanofarad capacitor in between ground and this RB0 pin. But without capacitor also, to some extent, we can avoid false interrupt sensing. So because of noise, there may be fluctuating signal. So what we can do is, when we close the switch, definitely interrupt will be triggered because there is falling edge. Here we must ensure that this pin is low for some time, and when we switch the close the switch, there is some issue of ground bouncing, switch bouncing. So as it is mechanical switch, when we close the switch at the beginning, switch may not be properly closed. So voltage level may fluctuate at the time of closing or opening the switch. So we must allow some time, and after some time we must check whether signal is really low. This ensures that false sensing. So in the program what I have done, I have checked what is status of this pin when interrupt is triggered. So if this pin is really 0 at logic 0 level, that means switch is closed, and then we can say that interrupt is really occurred. So in this subroutine, I am clearing the LCD display with the help of LCD initialization function, and then displaying message valid interrupt occurred. So valid interrupt is displayed on first row, and occurred is displayed on second row of the LCD display. After that, I am adding small delay. Otherwise, this message will be disappeared immediately. So delay is added here. Delay is added for around 4 seconds. After 4 seconds, this interrupt 0 I flag bit is already set cleared here. One more time I have written. No need to write. After that, enable global interrupt. So set GIE bit equal to 1. The moment we entered into the subroutine, we cleared this bit. So when you exit from this subroutine, this bit must be again set to 1. Otherwise, interrupt will not be triggered when you next time press the switch. So this is simple program. So let me quickly show you video. In this video, we'll see use of peak development board for studying interrupt on RB0 pin. In this video, we'll see use of peak development board for studying interrupt on RB0 pin. Interrupt on RB0 pin is also called INT0 interrupt. To study this interrupt, we'll make use of switch given on the board. In this video, we'll see use of peak development board for studying interrupt on RB0 pin. Interrupt on RB0 pin is also called INT0 interrupt. To study this interrupt, we'll make use of switch given on the board. One end of this tactile switch is connected to ground and other end of this tactile switch is connected to this connector. These two pins in the connector are shorted and they are connected to this tactile switch. In this experiment, we also require pull-up resistor. Pull-up resistor is already given here, but to make pull-up resistor active, we must short circuit these two pins. This interrupt will be triggered by pressing this tactile switch. So connect jumper in between output of the switch and RB0 pin like this. Now switch on the power supply. Program is running in main function. So message on the display is I am in main program. So when I trigger the interrupt by pressing this switch, program will enter into interrupt service routine. So valid interrupt is triggered. I have added delay here. After 4-5 seconds, program will again go back to main program. So once again, if I press this switch, interrupt will be triggered and program will enter into interrupt service routine where I am displaying message valid interrupt occurred. Thank you. So we can configure interrupt for rising edge or falling edge as according to our requirement. Quickly, let me show you some of the SFRs associated with this interrupt handling. This INT con3 register, it is again SFR. This IN2 IP. So IN2 to external interrupt priority bit. When this bit is 1, high priority is assigned to interrupt on RB2 pin. When INT1 IP bit is 1, high priority will be assigned to INT1 interrupt and so on. When this bit is 0, low priority is assigned. The only difference is whenever multiple interrupt occurs, priority is given to high priority interrupts. And for high priority and low priority interrupts, vector addresses are different. Then other bits are like INT2 IE. So if you want to enable INT2 interrupt, this bit must be set to 1. If you want to enable INT1 interrupt, this bit must be set to 1. And then flag bits. So whenever you want to make use of any interrupt source related to peripheral device or external interrupt, flag bit must be cleared at the beginning. And whenever interrupt occurs in the service routine, corresponding flag bit must be cleared. Otherwise, without valid condition, interrupt may be re-triggered. Then PIR registers. PIR stands for peripheral interrupt request. So these PIR registers consist of flag bits. You can see here. This PSIF, parallel slave port read write interrupt flag bit. ADIF, analog to digital converter flag bit. RCIF, USART receive interrupt flag bit. TXIF, USART transmit interrupt flag bit. SSPIF, master synchronous serial port in interrupt flag bit. CCP1IF, capture compare module 1 interrupt flag bit. Timer 2 interrupt flag bit. Timer 1 interrupt flag bit. So PIR register consists of basically flag bits of different interrupt sources. PIR2 register. OSC FIF, oscillator fail interrupt flag bit. CMIF, comparator interrupt flag bit, and so on. So for different sources, there are different flag bits. Then PIE registers, peripheral interrupt enable register. So it consists of enable bits. Like if you want interrupt for analog to digital conversion, the moment you want to detect whether end of ADC conversion is complete or not, then with the help of interrupt and with the help of polling method you can do it. So polling method of checking the end of conversion for ADC is already discussed. So with the help of interrupt also you can do it. So with the help of these interrupt enable bits, we can enable or disable required interrupt source. When these bits are 0, corresponding interrupt source get disabled. So there are two such registers, PIE1, PIE2. Then there are IPR registers, interrupt priority registers, peripheral interrupt priority registers. There are two such registers, IPR1 and IPR2. So with the help of bits in these registers, we can assign high priority or low priority. When bit is 1, high priority will be assigned, and when bit is 0, low priority will be assigned. So two such registers are there. And in reset control register, there is one bit, IPEL. When this bit is 1, then it enables priority levels on the interrupts. And when this bit is 0, disables priority levels on the interrupt. Then all interrupts will have only high priority when this bit is disabled. Next, we will move on to EEPROM. In PIC microcontroller, on chip EEPROM is available, and this EEPROM is readable as well as writable. EEPROM holds the data even though power is switched off, so it is non-volatile memory. If you are developing some kind of product, and in this product, if you are doing some operations when power is on, and if you want to recall these operations when power goes up and resumes, in that case, you can save these conditions in EEPROM memory. Say, for example, you have designed wireless mobile auto switch to control the water pump in the agriculture sector. When you give on command to the motor, motor will be switched on. There is possibility of power failure. When power fails, then after some time if power resumes, power is available, system will be again switched on. Your system must know before power failure, your power pump was on or off. So by writing proper bit values in EEPROM memory, you can detect whenever a program restarts at the beginning, you can retrieve data from the EEPROM memory, and with the help of bits, you can check whether more power, that water pump was already on or off. So a bit in the EEPROM memory is, for example, 1, then it was indication that motor was earlier switched on. And when bit is 0, it is the indication that motor was in off condition, like this. So some conditions, if you want to check, even though power goes off and comes back, then that is possible with the help of EEPROM memory. So there is on-chip EEPROM memory available. Limited bytes are there. Let me show you how many bytes are available. .256 bytes are available. In PIC 18A4520, 256 bytes of EEPROM are available. In other PIC devices, number of bytes may be larger. Some PIC devices may have on-chip 1 kilobyte EEPROM memory. It is electrically erasable ROM. I will call it as EEPROM. Let us quickly understand registers associated with EEPROM memory. We'll quickly do it. And very simple code we have written for writing and reading data from the EEPROM memory. So first of all, understand registers associated with EEPROM memory. There are 4 registers, 4 special function registers associated with EEPROM memory. So through these registers, we can do read operation as well as write operation to the EEPROM memory locations. And through user program, we can do both operations, read operation as well as write operation. We can select any particular location for reading the data or writing the data. There is first SFR called EECON1, EEPROM control register 1. So with the help of bits in this register, we can select EEPROM memory for write operation or program memory for write operation. And there are other bits. With the help of those bits, we can decide whether we want to perform read operation or write operation. Second register is not physically available register. I repeat, second register is not physically available register. And content is also not given. Whenever we want to perform write operation in EEPROM, there is sequence of 2 bytes. So those 2 bytes must be written in sequence in this register. And then only you can write data in actual EEPROM location. So with the help of program, I will explain it. Then another register is EData. This register holds the data. For example, when you read data from the EEPROM location, that data is read into the EData register. When you want to write data to the EEPROM location, that data must be loaded into the EData register. So same register is used for writing data to the EEPROM location, and same register is used for reading data from the EEPROM location. And fourth register is EADR, stands for address. So this register contains address of the EEPROM location. So for example, if you want to write data to the address 0x01, EEPROM address is 0x01. Then first of all, you must load 0x01 address into the EADR register. ADR stands for address. So this register points to the one particular location in EEPROM memory, and total there are 256 locations. So if you load EADR register with 0x10, it will point to the 0x10 EEPROM memory location. So for writing data, for example, to the 0x01 location, you must load EADR register with 0x01. Then write your data in EData register, and then with help of control bits in EECON1, you can enable write operation. I will discuss entire C code for both read and write operations. Some properties of this on-chip EEPROM memory. This stands for electrically erasable programmable read-only memory, and it is type of non-volatile memory. So once you write the data, it will be written even though power goes off, unless and until you do not modify this data with the help of software program. Same values will be written. So it retains data even if power is removed. In PIC microcontroller, it can be read or write using application program. And last important point is number of write operations guaranteed by manufacturer is 10 lakh. So whenever you develop any kind of product, and if you are doing write operations in EEPROM memory, then maximum guaranteed write operations are 10 lakh. It may exceed, but guarantee is given for 10 lakh operations. So after 10 lakh operations, there is no guarantee of data retention. So if you are designing any kind of product, you have to ensure that over a life cycle of the product, your number of write operations should not exceed 10 lakh. So SFRs I already discussed. So this data EEPROM allows byte read or byte write. You cannot write more than 1 byte at a time. So at a time we can perform 1 byte read operation or 1 byte write operation. EData holds 8-bit data for read or write operation. EADRESS register holds address of the EEPROM location in being accessed. So it may be accessed for read or write. I have shown here assembly code. I don't want to discuss assembly code here, but just one thing I want to highlight here. The important thing is, I already said there is one register called ECON2. Let me show once again. This second control register, ECON2. This is not a physical register. So in this register, we are supposed to write first of all 55 hex. After that, AA hex. And after that, we must actually start write operation. For read operation, we need not do anything with ECON2 register. But for write operation, there is proper sequence. So that sequence I will discuss. These are the registers associated with EEPROM memory. INT-con register. Because interrupts must be disabled while writing to the EEPROM memory. Otherwise, data may not be properly written to the EEPROM memory when write operation is under progress. Let me first of all discuss this control register. It is ECON1, EEPROM control register 1. First bit is EPGD. This bit is important for us. When this bit is 1, access flash program memory. Access is given to flash program memory. What we want? We want access to the EEPROM memory. So this first bit must be 0 in our program. Then second bit is CFGS. Flash program oblique data from or configuration select bit. When bit is 1, access configuration registers, and when bit is 0, access flash program or data memory. So this bit must be also 0. Then there are another two important bits, WREN bit and WR bit. When WREN bit is 1, it allows write cycles to the flash program memory, and when bit is 0, it inhibits write cycle to flash program memory. So for performing write operation to the EEPROM memory, this bit must be 1. So in our case, this bit must be 1. And another bit is WR, write control bit. So this, when we set this bit to 1, actual write operation begins. This earlier bit is enable or disable bit. But to initiate the write operation, WR bit must be set to 1. So this bit must set to 1. And doing read operation, RD bit must be set to 1. So whenever you want to do write operation, WR bit must be set to 1. And when you want to do read operation, RD bit must be set to 1. You cannot set WR and RD bit simultaneously 1. At a time, you can do only one operation, write or read. So let me quickly open the program. I will take few minutes to discuss this program. So first part of the code is exactly similar to our previous codes. I have written here two different functions. DLMS function is similar to our program previous programs. I have written two functions, memory write and memory read. These are user defined functions. Memory write function is not returning any value, so return value is void, and two arguments are passed. First argument is address of the EEPROM location for write operation, and second parameter is data to be returned to the EEPROM location. So two parameters we are passing to this function, that is memory write function, address and data. Another function is MEM underscore RD. It is memory read function. It is returning the value read from the EEPROM location. And what we are passing here is, we are passing address of the EEPROM location for reading the data. So two functions we have written. Let us understand both functions. First function is memory read function. So to read the data from the particular EEPROM location, you must load EADR register with address. Say for example, in my program, I am reading data. Let me show you. I am reading data from EEPROM location 0x01. So this passing parameter must be 0x01. And after calling this function, data from EEPROM location 0x01 will be read. and it is saved in variable C. Okay. So what happens here, when from another function we call this function, or from main program we call this function, we must call this function with address, EPROM address. That EPROM address is received in this variable ADDRR, that is address. Short code word I have given to address, and this address must be loaded in EADR register. So in PIC microcontroller there is on chip EADR register. I already discussed it. So address is written into this EADR register. Then what you need to do is you select EPROM for read operation. So for selecting EPROM, this EPGD bit must be 0, CFGS bit must be 0, which I already discussed. So in this program, I have cleared these two bits, EPGD bit, CFGS bit. After that, as I already mentioned, to initiate read operation, RD bit must be set to 1. Next, what I am doing is, I am setting this RD bit to 1. After some time, data will be available in E data register. After few instruction cycles, data will be loaded in E data register. So data read from the EPROM memory location, which is pointed by this address, will be read into E data SFR. So its value will be returned to the calling program. So look at here, calling program, that is inside the main function. C is equal to memory read 0x01. So after execution of this function, data from EPROM location 0x01 will be read and it will be saved in variable C. If you want to read data from another location, let's say 0x20, EPROM location 0x20. So when you call this function with parameter 0x20, data of EPROM location 0x20 will be read and it will be saved in variable C. Now quickly understand write function, EPROM write function. So this is the EPROM write function. It is not returning any value. So return value is void. Then we are receiving two parameters from the calling program. First parameter is address of the EPROM location where we want to write the data. And in second parameter, we receive 8-bit data, that is 1 byte data, which is to be returned to the memory location pointed by address. First of all, disable interrupt. Doing write operation, while doing write operation, all interrupt must be disabled and is mentioned in the data sheet. So first of all, disable all interrupts. Then load address register, EPROM address register with address received from the calling function. Then load data into the E data register. E data is special function register associated with EPROM module. So both address and data is received from calling program. After that, these two bits must be clear to 0. This EPGD and CFGS bits must be 0 in both read and write operations. Because what we select here is we select EPROM memory. After that, this WRN bit must be set to 1. I already discussed this. WRN bit must be set to 1. What is the meaning? Allows write cycles to the flash program / data EPROM. And we have selected here EPROM memory. Next, very important, unless and until if you do not follow these two steps, data will not be returned to the EPROM memory. And these two steps are mentioned in the datasheet of this PIC18F 4.0. And this sequence is there for all PIC devices. So whether you use 16F series device, 18F series device or different part numbers, this sequence must be followed for writing to the EPROM memory. So EECON2 is SFR, it is not physical register. So this register must be first of all loaded with 0x55 followed by 0xAA. And after that, you set WR bit in EECON1 register to 1. So this EECON1 register, there is WR bit. So this WR bit must be set to 1 to start write operation. Write operation requires more time as compared with read operation of the EPROM memory. So we must wait till write operation is complete, and that we can check with the help of flag bit. EIF flag bit. So we must check this EIF flag bit. Already discussed this flag bits in interrupt handling logic. So there are different SFRs available with interrupt handling module, and that module contains different SFRs, and in one of the SFR there is this EIF bit. And what is that register? Peripheral interrupt register 2, this register PIR2 bits.EIF. So as long as this bit is 0, we must wait. When this bit is set to 1, write operation is complete. So we must continuously poll here. There is one exclamatory mark before this condition. It indicates not equal to. So as long as this bit is not equal to 1, we must wait here. The moment EIF flag bit becomes 1, write operation is complete. After that, you clear the flag bit. Your flag bit must be always cleared. Then enable your interrupt. And then subroutine is over here. So let us go to this main program. Trees, bit, trees, all conditions I have shown. I am doing first of all here write operation in the EPROM memory. What I am doing is MEMWRT. I am calling this function. It is memory write function related to EPROM. I am first passing address 0x01 is EPROM address and 0xBB is EPROM data. I am writing this 0xBB to which locations? EPROM location 0x01. After that, what I am doing is I am reading EPROM data. You can put any value here. I am putting same address, let's say 0x01. So with the help of simple simulation, let us see. To include simulator in the MPLAB X IDE, you click on the file menu and select project properties. This dialog will appear on the screen. I have already selected here simulator. Simulator is already selected. Now what we will do is, we will run the simulator and we will check data written in the EPROM memory. So look at the position of my cursor, click on this debug project. When you click on the debug project, first of all program will be built. So there is breakpoint in this program. Is showing breakpoint. So I will do now here single stepping. Let me reset. Program is reset. So I will execute one instruction or one line code at a time. So there is one icon here, step over. With the help of the step over, we can execute code on one line at a time. So now cursor is here at line number 74. This memory write function is already called and executed. Now what I will do is I will open target memory views. So click on the Windows menu and scroll down to target memory views and select EE data memory. We want to see content of EE data memory. It is open. You will see here data BB is written in this location. We have written data to which location address is 0x01. So address 00, 01, 02. Each row contains here 16 locations of EPROM memory. Then second row begins with address 10, 11, 12, 13 and so on. Third row begins with address EPROM address 0x20 and so on. Total 256 bytes are there. So only 0x01 location is written and rest of the locations are FF. Now I will go back to the program and I will modify. EPROM location. So let us write data to 0x10 I am writing different kind of data. Let's take 0x8b. I am writing data 0x8b to which locations? 0x10. So let me rebuild the program. Now what I am doing is, I am again once again doing single stepping here. So program is executed up to line number 73. At line number 73, we have called memory write function. So let us check content of this EEPROM memory. Second row, look at here, second row, address 10. So this, what is the data written here? 8b. So 8b data is written through our program. So we have written 8b, look at here, 8b is the data and what is the address? 0x10. Similarly, we can do read operation. So let us read data from EEPROM location 0x01 and put it on the port C. So what I will do is, I will execute this function, memory read function. It is executed. Let me execute port C is equal to C as well. It is executed. Now we will see data on the port C. What we have done is, here we have read data from the EEPROM location 0x01. At 0x01 we have already written 0xBB. So 0xBB will be there on port C. Sorry, as we have modified the program, data on the 0x01 location is lost. What is that data? Data is FF there. So what we'll do is, we'll read data from 0x10 location. It is 8b. So let us go back to program. So this address now I am taking 10. So again we need to rebuild the program. I am doing single stepping. We'll see now content on port C. After that I will end the topic. So what I have done here, I have written data 0x8b at EEPROM memory location 0x10. After that I am doing read operation on same location. So data of the same location is read and it is saved in variable C. Data in variable C is again written on the port C. So on port C we must have 0x8b. So let us check. So click on the window menu, scroll down to target memory views and select SFRs. Select SFRs. So in this task pane, you search which port? It is port C. So search port C. So this is the port C. Look at here. This is port C. What is the hexadecimal data? 8b. That means we have performed correct read operation on EEPROM memory. So this is all about writing C code for EEPROM memory for read as well as write operations. So I end today's meeting here. We'll go for question answers. Yes, I did not use calculator. I directly wrote 174 at the beginning. It is 74. Later on, I corrected that mistake. Questions are not there in the chat box. There are comments only about the audio level. Few participants might have not heard me properly. Problem will be with their either network or their audio system in laptop. is INT0 by default high priority? See, default values of all SFRs are given in the data sheet. Just we need to check because there are so many things in the data sheet and it is difficult to remember. So we can check through the data sheet on power on reset what is the priority. Just go to the data sheet. INT0 interrupt. INT0 interrupt has always high priority and rest of the interrupts you can assign the priority. Only INT0 interrupt has high priority always. And for other interrupt sources, you can change the priority. Because for INT0 interrupt, for changing the priority, there is no bit available in any SFR. It means that it has only high priority. And for other interrupt sources, we can assign higher or lower priority. Next question, please. Can you explain how I use data EEPROM in AutoStarter application? In fact, last year I conducted internship program on this design and development of this wireless mobile auto switch, and it is GSM based. So what I want to mean is you decide certain conditions. An important condition is whenever user give on command to switch on the motor. In agriculture sector, power source is really worst. Many times there is power failure, and when power fails, in the absence of this auto switch, farmer has to rush to the location where motor is installed, and then he need to manually switch on the motor if auto switch is not used. Now, if auto switch is designed, then in auto switch, what we can do is we can assign one particular EEPROM location, and in that EEPROM location, say for example, 0x01 EEPROM location. In this location, we can use some bits, and with the help of these bits, we can assign some conditions. One condition is whether motor is switched on or motor is in switched off condition, on or off condition. So whenever motor is switched on, what you can do is last bit you can set it to 1. Total 8 bits are there in this location, and remaining bits you can assign for other purpose. That is up to you. So it is up to you whether you want to use all 8 bits together to put to decide status of the motor, whether it is on or off. So I have used all 8 bits together. So when data is 0x in this location, this is address. So when this address contains hexadecimal data, let me talk in terms of hexadecimal data. You can also make use of binary bits. It is up to you. So when this location contains 0x00 data, motor is off. And when this location contains 0x01 data, motor is on. Now when user gives command, maybe through interactive voice response system, IVRS system, or through SMS, system will receive it. I am doing so many operations there. I am checking incoming mobile number. If it matches with already stored numbers, then and then only that command is accepted. So all registered mobile numbers I am saving in EEPROM memory. So for example, in first location, when data is 0x00, when system receives valid op command from the user, after that I am switching off the motor, and after that I am clearing data in this EEPROM location. I am making this data 0x00. And whenever system receives on command to switch on the motor, motor is switched on with the help of other bits, and in this EEPROM location I am writing 0x01. Now say for example, after switching on the motor, if power goes off, then data in the EEPROM memory will be 0x01. So after some time, power will be available. So your system will be automatically, there is power on reset, because when power goes off, there is no power for the system. In some case, you can also use battery, no doubt. But with the help of battery, you can keep your system on. Your microcontroller system will be on if battery is used. but power will not be available for water pump. So forget about there is no battery, right? Just to explain the concept, let us assume that battery is not available for microcontroller system. So when system will restart after availability of the power, at the beginning you read data from EEPROM memory, and which location now? In this case 0x01. If this data is 0x01, it implies that when power goes off, that time motor was on. So with the help of program, you switch on the water pump. And if data is 0x00 in this location, it means that when power goes off, that time also motor was in off condition. Don't do anything. So that's the thing. So this way we can use EEPROM. So there are number of ways to use this EEPROM. Sir, what if two or more high priority interrupt occurs at the same time? I have not practically tested it. Usually one of the interrupt will be definitely served. At a time, microcontroller never serves two interrupts. So internally there may be again, say for example, INT0 interrupt has highest priority. So along with INT0 interrupt, if some other interrupt occurs, then definitely priority is given for INT0 interrupt. And when two priority interrupt occurs at a time, corresponding flag bit will be set. So what user can do is, in your interrupt handling subroutine, you will have here certain conditions. Let me once again open that code. So one interrupt will be definitely served first. So here you will have LSIP conditions. You are checking here multiple interrupt sources. So once that interrupt is served through interrupt service routine, again the interrupt of another high priority interrupt flag bit is set. So again that interrupt will be served after that. So definitely all interrupts will be served. So EEPROM memory I am using for number of applications in number of operations for wireless mobile auto, like for saving the mobile numbers, saving some values of voltage levels. So many things I am doing there. I am putting some conditions in the EEPROM memory. With the help of those conditions, I am changing configuration of the wireless auto switch. How to expertise with all these instructions? I can't memorize it. So if you can't memorize it, then you require hands-on experience. So if you do hands-on in software, if you do hands-on in hardware, then definitely you will acquire the skill. Unless and until there is no hands-on, you cannot keep all these things in your memory. So two things are there: software hands-on and hardware hands-on. If you do both things, you can develop the products. Next question, please. May I close meeting? Questions are over. So thank you so much for joining today's session. we'll meet tomorrow at 6 p.m. And tomorrow I'm going to discuss use of timer zero. Timer zero interrupt I will discuss, as well as polling method to check whether timer overflow is occurred or not. So we'll discuss both polling method as well as interrupt method with regard to timer zero. After that, I will discuss about another two projects. Those projects I will discuss how to implement them in actual practice. So I will not discuss entire circuit diagram. I will discuss its block diagram and the method to implement those projects. We have given access to all recorded sessions. We have not given access to download. So definitely you can watch recorded session many times, and all this access to all these recorded sessions will be available 1 month after end of this internship program. So thank you.